Hello everyone. This is the 5th Epical Revelation Fellowship. It is August 11th, 2013, and tonight we're going to continue our study of paper 119, The Bestowals of Christ Michael, and we're on section 7, beginning on the first paragraph tonight, this afternoon. And Dawn, would you say us an opening prayer?
Dear Father, please help us to discern your will for our lives every day. Help us to understand the Urantia book and to better understand the truth, beauty, and goodness that you're trying to explain to us. Help humanity to find its way. Amen.
Okay, we've been studying the 7 bestowals of Michael, and we've got one section left in this, so since we only have one section, I'm going to do a quick overview of what we've studied so far.
We have 2, 7, and 8.
Hmm?
The 7th and final bestowal, and then Michael's post-bestowal.
That's right, that's right, yeah. It's a whole lot. We got two sections?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, we do have 2 sections, I'm sorry. I stand corrected. So we should have finished this easily today, I believe. That's right, we do have 2 sections. Okay. Alright, so let me go back up here a little bit. Let me recap real quickly what we studied. Bring everybody up to speed. We started out with Michael's first bestowal, and that was as a Melchizedek, right? It was almost 1 billion years ago, and then he waited 1,500,000 years, and he bestowed himself as a Lenonidek son on the capital of Polonian, System 11, Constellation 37. Then he bestowed himself as a material son, and that was on System 87, Constellation 61, the headquarters world. Then he bestowed himself as a supreme seraphim on the world 462, System 84, Constellation 3. And then he bestowed himself as an ascendant pilgrim. They think his name was Evantod, and this was on Uversa. That's our system capital. And then he bestowed himself as a Morantia mortal on the headquarters planet of the Constellation 5. And now we're going to talk about a little bit of 7th bestowal as Jesus here.
And how much time took place between all those, or?
The first and the 6th.
Almost 850,000 years.
Between the 7th
Oh,
and
no,
the
no, no, no. No, what am I saying?
1,500
For all of it?
How much?
for each
What?
one, in between each one.
In between each one was 1,500,000 years. So this whole process through his 7 bestowals was 1 billion years. 1 billion years from the first one all the way to the 7th. Okay? Let me get off this slide here. Go back to my first. The 7th and final bestowal. Roy, would you like to start reading?
Okay. The 7th and final bestowal. For tens of thousands of years, we all look forward to the 7th and final bestowal of Michael. Gabriel had taught us that this terminal bestowal would be made in the likeness of mortal flesh, but we are woefully ignorant of the time, place, and manner of this culminating adventure.
So for, excuse me, tens of thousands of years, not just a few weeks, right? They've been told of this 7th and final bestowal coming up, okay? And you can imagine all these people in the mansion worlds and all these other places that were going through, you know, on their merry little way, they heard stories of this bestowal coming up, so they had something to look forward to. So it's kind of like us looking forward to what? The 4 outer space levels, isn't it? Or us getting to paradise, even, right? So everything takes a long time in the universe. All right? Nobody gets in a hurry. Okay. Don, would you take the next one, please?
The public announcement that Michael had selected Urantia as the theater for his final bestowal was made shortly after we learned about the default of Adam and Eve, and thus, for more than 35,000 years, your world occupied a very conspicuous place in the councils of the entire universe. There was no secrecy, aside from the incarnation mystery, connected with any step in the Rancho Bestowal. From first to last, up to the final and triumphant return of Michael to Salvington as Supreme Universe Sovereign, there was the fullest universe publicity of all that transpired on your small but highly honored world.
Okay, so this was, they made the announcement shortly after the Adam and Eve default, right? Okay, so everyone waited around for 35,000 years before it actually started to get underway. Now think about this too. Between Adam and Eve and the bestowal of Michael, what happened? Melchizedek came, right? That was 1980 years before Christ, right? Melchizedek was here. So all this Bible history you hear about Abraham and all the history of Abraham, that was only 2,000 years, or close to 2,000, 1980 years before Christ, right? So all that written record that we've been basing all of our beliefs on are not that old, are they?
No.
They're really not. Because it was well after Abraham that the first bits of the stories of the Bible was even written down, right? So that went around as hearsay for a long, long, long time, right?
This paragraph really makes me sad, because that means the whole universe watched how badly he was treated on this planet.
Yeah.
And it just makes me cry.
Now, what makes it even
It's
worse,
really sad.
Don, is these beings were all in anticipation to witness this final bestowal.
Right.
What a disappointment that must have been to them.
Uses that word, the theater.
The theater.
Yeah.
Theater.
Yeah.
You know?
They must have been horrified
And
at the end
yeah.
to see what humanity did to Christ. I mean,
What we was capable of.
And notice here it says, your small but highly honored planet.
That's exact that end of it. Small but highly honored.
What an honor to
Exactly.
host
Yeah,
the
we
Creator's
screwed it up.
Son, and we treated them like,
and then we blame God for it.
yeah.
But
Great.
you know, they took more from everything that happened. It's been a learning. This planet is still shows the rest of the universe, and that's why all the students I was reading in here, why all the students, and we're still such a even small planet has such a high status, because for something that goes so wrong in the universe, the students of the universe come to our little planet to learn, so we are actually helping.
Yeah, our stupidity is helping them.
Yeah,
isn't it?
we're helping.
Yeah, we're not a very good example of what you should do after a bestowal.
That's
right?
one reason why we'll get to be agadonters.
That's right. Okay, and this is the slide I just went over, and this is the seventh bestowal, right? Jesus of Nazareth. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. Okay. Keep all my stuff straight.
Rodney?
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 All right. While we believed that this scroll, while we believed that this would be the method, we never knew until the time of the event itself that Michael would appear on earth as a helpless infant of the realm. Theretofore had he always appeared as a fully developed individual of the personality group of the bestowal selection. And it was a thrilling announcement which was broadcast from Salvington, telling that the babe of Bethlehem had been born on the rancho.
Now, do y'all realize the significance of this? All his other bestowals, he bestowed himself as a full-fledged being of that time, right? And that type of being. And coming to Urantia, or Earth, he bestowed himself as an infant of the realm, totally helpless, as just like any other human being is born.
Hey, Roger,
Yeah.
he could have not have been a babe on the other realms, though, because they aren't born, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point, Rodney, they normally aren't born. However, he could have been incarnated in a beginning stage of any of those beings too. We don't know what,
Exactly. Okay.
you know, what type of stage they were in when he did that.
So
So
beings on other spheres are not born? Is that what he just said?
some of them are, yeah, some of them are not. Especially like the non-index suns and things like that. They are created as,
Oh,
as
those. Oh, okay.
full-fledged
okay,
beings,
okay,
right? So are the spirit type beings,
Okay.
right?
The finite
Huh?
are born.
All the finite beings are born, but not the higher celestial type
Right,
beings.
right.
that
So
we
once you
incarnate.
get out of finite,
Yeah, yeah. Now think about what Rodney just said too, and it's a good point that the Melchizedeks are created, but they're created full-fledged Melchizedeks. In other
Right,
words,
right.
the full-fledged beings.
Right,
They don't go through a growing period.
right.
Okay, so and the same way with the non-index suns, they're created full-fledged beings. Okay,
But as a true finite being, you'd have to bring born as an infant.
yeah, that's right.
yeah. So
Now that's not true with what? The
Materials.
mortal, the ascendant mortal, right?
ascended morning.
An
those-
ascendant mortal had to have been born on a planet somewhere, but he
What
was,
about material sons?
huh?
Was-
Material sons are born,
yeah.
right? So material
So
sons.
from material sons on down, maybe.
they all
I
have
have
an
to be-
infancy of
right.
some type. Yeah.
What about the angels?
Angels
no.
do not. Angels are
Created.
created full-fledged angels. Now, what's interesting about all these beings is this: when they are created, they're endowed with certain amount of pre-knowledge of the type of being they are. Okay, but they still have experiences just like we do, don't
Exactly.
they? So from the time of being born to the time for the rest of their lives, they have an experiential part of their life, and that also goes into what? The supreme being, doesn't it? All right. Now another interesting thing that y'all should think about too: creator son and creative mother spirit. They create finite universes. Now, isn't that an experience?
Yes.
So their experience is what? Part of the supreme also, isn't it? Okay. So they're part of the experience of the supreme. Okay. Linda, you want to take the next one? Oh, I'm sorry. The next one? Let me forward it first.
We then not only realized that our creator and friend was taking the most precarious step in all his career, apparently risking his position and authority on this bestowal as a helpless infant, but we also understood that his experience in this final and mortal bestowal would eternally enthrone him as the undisputed and supreme sovereign of the universe of Nebadon. For a third of a century of Earth time, all eyes in all parts of this local universe were focused on Urantia. All intelligences realized that the last bestowal was in progress, and as we had long known of the Lucifer rebellion in Satania and of the Caligastia disaffection on Urantia, we well understood the intensity of the struggle which would ensue when our ruler condescended to incarnate on Urantia in the humble form and likeness of mortal flesh.
That's something. Ain't it?
That is something else, isn't
I
it?
mean, Lucifer. You know, anybody ever see the movie The Christ?
Passion of the Christ.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You know that movie. It made me cry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's horrible.
It really was a very heavy-duty battle that went on when he was here. Now think about this, though. Does this not change, the way it tells the story here, does this not change your whole concept, if you were just a Christian, of the significance of the life of Christ? Because the meaning of his life has to do with the sovereignty of the local universe. It has nothing to do with sin, does it?
No.
Nothing. It has to do with rebellion, which is sin, but not sin itself. Right? He came as a universe ruler to claim his sovereignty, to finish his sovereignty like every other creator son. Okay? So the importance of this has nothing to do with our petty little sins, does it? It has everything to do with the sovereignty of the universe and the makeup in the universe as a whole. Okay? His sacrifice is taking himself down from being our sovereign and putting himself in a position as a helpless infant who could what? Go wrong. Can he? Like that. So he comes down as this infant with the plans of doing nothing but what? The Father's will. And showing the creatures of the universe what a perfect life is, living with the Father's will. This is what he was doing. He was showing us how to do the Father's will. That's what it all boils down to. Now that is the sacrifice. Okay? Him coming down from his position as our universe ruler down as a helpless babe. Okay? Now, we're going to find out later on as they talk about his life, the whole concept of sacrifice is redundant and ridiculous. It really is. God doesn't require a sacrifice of his sons. None of his sons. Not his creator sons, not any of them. This is something they do as willing participants, okay, to prove their own sovereignty. All of them do it. All right? And it comes back to this. We should willingly, without hesitation, dedicate our lives to the will of God, not because we've sinned, not because Christ died for our sins, not because any of this, but because we love the Father and we want to do the will of the Father. Okay?
Think of the trust that he had in the Father,
In the Father.
and in all of the beings relegated, to serve him.
Yeah.
And this whole plan. Think of the trust in what he did.
He put himself out as a babe, as an infant. Think about how much faith that had to have had
Right.
just to do that.
Right.
Much less go through an entire struggling life. This time when he was born was not an easy time by any stretch of the imagination. They didn't have indoor plumbing. They didn't have a 7-Eleven you can run down and get a gallon of milk, right? I mean, it was pretty, you struggled for existence every single day.
And then the opposition.
And then he has the opposition of what? Lucifer,
Satan,
Caligastus, Satan, plus who else? The Midwayers, the Jewish community,
Exactly.
okay? Rome itself, okay?
Yeah.
So he had to deal with all these other factors. Now, why did he do it during this period of time? Because he's taking on every possible bad situation that a human being can go through. And think about it this way. When he willingly died on the cross, this was after he had finished his bestowal. Okay? So he went through the most horrible type of human death that a human being can go through. Okay? Why did he do this? To show us how to live. That's what he did. Showed us what it meant to follow the Father's will, regardless of what happens to you, right?
And also how to die, because
How
other
to
people
die.
were being
How to live, how to
being
die.
crucified also.
Constantly.
Constantly. So.
Yeah.
So should we be afraid of doing the Father's will? Look at like you said, the trust and the faith. Should there be anything to fear
We
about
should
that?
have nothing to fear. We
Right.
should have only love in our hearts.
Right.
It's not about fear. It's not about fearing God. It never has been about fearing God. We started out the wrong way. Fear was a good motivator for barbarians. We're not barbarians anymore. We're supposed to not be barbarians anymore anyway. We should have love of God through faith, right? Our concept and our relationship with God should be through love, not fear, right? Thing we got to fear nowadays is each other, don't we?
Exactly.
We still have the barbarians. We hadn't gotten rid of that. But we should replace everything else with the love, shouldn't we? Okay. So let's keep going. So we're going into this 7th bestowal here. Find the right thing. I got these labeled, but I can't seem to keep them straight in. All right. Okay.
Joshua ben Joseph, the Jewish baby, was conceived and was born into the world just as all the babies before in sins, except that this particular baby was the incarnation of Michael Nebadon, a divine son of paradise and the creator of all this local universe of things and beings. And this mystery of the incarnation of deity within the human form of Jesus, otherwise of natural origin on the world, will forever remain unsolved. Even in eternity, you will never know the technique and method of the incarnation of the Creator in the form and likeness of His creatures.
That is.
It won't keep me.
I get it.
Okay.
You go ahead to the next on this one.
That is the secret.
Even in eternity, okay, I'm just going to read that part again. Even in eternity, you will never know the technique and method of the incarnation of the Creator in the form and likeness of His creatures. That is the secret of Samaritan, and such mysteries are the exclusive possession of those divine sons who have passed through the bestowal experience.
Okay, so what are they talking about this big mystery? What's the big mystery? The mystery is this. The bestowals, the incarnation of the Creator sons, they do themselves. They don't have other beings make them incarnate in these beings, right? They do everything themselves. They put themselves into these beings, and what do they do after death? They bring themselves back to life, don't they? That's the mystery of the incarnation, okay? And who knows how this mystery works? Only the sons of God that's been through it. That's what they talk about, the secret of Samaritan. What's Samaritan? That's the world of the Creator sons. And only the Creator sons who have done this know how to do this and how this exactly works. So he himself bestowed himself into this child, and then at death he brought himself back to life. Did you get that working?
No, it's not working. I've turned it off a couple times.
Let me see it for a second. Battery may be dead. Yeah, battery's low.
Battery's dead.
Okay, let me see if I can get it here. I lost my mouse there. It's because I'm on the wrong mouse. Well, this one doesn't seem to be.
We'll just have to go by the other screen.
Yeah, we will.
So interesting that they use Joshua ben Joseph here.
Yeah, there's no series of books out on Joshua ben Joshua ben
You
Joseph.
said it's a whole series out of
There's
it?
a whole series. I read it years ago. I would love to read it again. I just don't have the time right now. It's very interesting.
This, you know, goes back to the Old Testament typology of the Messiah. It's so interesting.
Well, it gives you a tremendous insight into Jesus' life and through kind of another person in the series. It was beautiful.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, well, let me try it with this one. Hang on. Have I got anything new?
Honey, we can just use this one, the screen
Yeah,
up
we'll
here.
just go. I was just thinking of people at home, if they were reading out, we'll just use this one right now. Yeah, that would crash me midday.
Let's do that.
Okay, 7, 5.
So, you know, the other thing here is he was conceived and born into the world just as all other babies. So the virgin birth is a myth.
Yes,
There
it
was
is.
a
That was
virgin
my
birth.
next thing. So
Yeah.
he came in as a human, born as a human through Joseph and Mary.
As their
and-
seed.
As their seed. But then the spirit of Michael was put on him.
Yes, yes. In other words, when that baby was born, instead of giving it what? Personality, right? And a thought adjuster, right? At 5. What happened? Michael incarnated his personality in
On
place of
The
that
thought
baby.
adjuster. In place of the thought adjuster.
Now he got a thought adjuster. The thought adjuster was
Came at 5.
came
yeah.
at 5, just
Yeah.
like every other baby,
Yeah.
right?
But the personality was
But the
Michael.
personality was Michael. You know, we've been talking about this personality thing, right?
You know, 'cause that was
So the spirit and the personality, right, was whom? Michael
Michael.
of Nebadon.
Mhm.
That's how it works.
Very cool. Very
Now, the physical form of that baby was whom?
Jesus.
The son of Mary.
Joshua ben
Oh,
Joseph's
yeah.
son
yeah, Joshua ben
Yeah.
yeah, and Mary's son.
and Mary's son.
Yeah, so the seed
There's
came
so
from Joseph,
mystery. The seed came from Joseph, the egg came from Mary.
Mary, and
It's just like every other baby.
you wouldn't. How many years that confused me though.
Okay, now let me tell you another thing that the Christian church is going to hate me for. This whole thing about Mary and Joseph not being married, it's a fairy tale. They had been married, what? 2 years almost,
Yeah,
when they had Jesus. Okay, just like every other Jewish couple, they married, they prepared a home, and what happened? A baby comes along.
It's almost the myth had to be continued, and in order to continue, they'd have to say it was before they were married, because
But-
then God inserted the seed into Mary as of the angels.
Okay.
So
But
to validate that.
to validate that, yeah.
Even though it wasn't true.
But we need to go back a little bit further. You know where this whole myth propagated from, don't you? Almost every prophet that came along during that time was born of virgins. Every single one of them. Okay? So, of course, Jesus had to be born of a virgin too. Just like all the rest of the prophets, right?
But virgin meant young woman at the time.
Virgin
It
meant
did not
young
mean
woman
that
at the
they
time.
had
Did not mean,
had
no,
sex.
but okay, Mithraism is where most of the stories of the Bible come from, because it was Paul that propagated this stuff, okay? And Paul was a Mithraist before he became a Jew. Well, he actually was a Mithraist. They grew up and became a Jew and eventually became Christian, right? So his concept, all the concepts, all the holidays, everything else, if people will study Mithraism, they're going to find the same exact things. Mithriist was born of his virgin. You know, all these stories came from Mithraism. All right. So what happens when Jesus comes along? He just tells us it's the same story all over again, right? It takes away from the miraculousness of his
Of the
birth
miracle.
if he came from normal parents,
Exactly.
right? Okay.
So, I mean, in other words, basically, that just destroyed, tears down the whole
Virgin
religious
birth.
setup and,
Yeah.
and everything. It's
Yeah.
just, and that's understandable, because like I said, when I say confused about it, I've always wondered, well, how did God impregnate her? What did Joseph have to do with that? And
Why would God impregnate? her?
Exactly.
Right?
Right, yeah.
It makes no sense.
I know.
You know, God does not shortcut His own physical laws, does He? Never has, never will. Okay? He sets them up that way for a purpose. It works. You know. So the thing that's miraculous about it is the personality of the Son of God, which is Christ, was put in that baby. Now they could have put it in a donkey. Could have been. It wouldn't have mattered, would it? He'd still been the Son of God. You know, that talk about sacrilege.
But it
that
would have
sounds
been an
sacrilege.
ass.
Yeah, it could have been anything. So the point is, they put it in a normal child. He had a normal upbringing, till he's about 12 years old. And what happens? He starts having a realization of a pre-existence, doesn't he? He starts discovering whom he is. Now that's pretty miraculous in itself.
Everybody
Didn't-
thought he was nuts.
You know?
Didn't Gabriel appear to him when he was 13 or something?
Mm-hmm.
It was Gabriel, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It did. Okay, so that's where we are. That's where this story's come from. Let's keep going. Okay.
I just finished.
You just finished? Rod? Roy, would you?
Certain wise men of earth knew of Michael's impending arrival through the contacts of one world with another. These wise men of spiritual insight learned of the forthcoming bestowal of Michael on Urantia, and the seraphim did, through the midway creatures, make announcement to a group of Chaldean priests whose leaders was Artnan. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, that's close enough.
These men of God visit the newborn child in the manger. The only supernatural event associated with the birth of Jesus was this announcement to Artnan and his associate by the seraphim of former attachment to Adam and Eve in the first garden.
Okay, that seraphim is the one that was attached to Adam and Eve, and he was the one that gave Gideon
Salonia.
announcement to this.
I just
Huh?
read that
Yeah.
recently. Salonia.
Salonia.
Salonia is who was who?
The seraphim in
The
the
seraphim.
garden.
Voice in the garden.
Yeah. Salonia was the seraphim in the garden. Now, this printed in yellow, as I've said before, is not directly in the book. This is a side note. I want to read this.
Yeah, this is really interesting.
Information first printing. These men of God visited the newborn child in the manger.
No,
In-
Manger.
In the manger, right. In the manger, removed at the second printing. Okay? Presumably, this change was made because the original seems to be inconsistent with the narrative of Jesus' birth in paper 122-8.
because he was like 2 years old, right?
That's right.
Right.
Which states that three wise men from the east visited Jesus when he was almost 3 weeks old, about the time the family left the inn, and over 2 weeks after they had moved out of the stables. Okay? However, it was certainly possible that Joseph and Mary may have taken the manger with them into the room of the inn in order to continue to have a cradle for Jesus. The need for a cradle would have been no less in the room than in the stable. If the manger was portable, as small feeding boxes often are, moving it along with the family seems quite reasonable. Okay, so he was 3 weeks old when these wise men visited him. Okay, not newborn, not just popped out, right? So these pictures of Jesus in the manger with 3 wise men in the stable, are they correct?
No.
No.
But I thought it was even longer than that
No,
when they
there's-
visited
When he
him.
was 2 years old, the three kings,
Here, my John.
the 3 magi's came, and they were the ones that brought the frankincense, myrrh.
That was during the time
So
of
these
hemorrhoid,
two-
right?
He was,
Hemorrhoid.
yeah, he was
Hemorrhoid.
older.
Got merged
Mary.
together.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You see how a story goes? All right. Breaks down all your fantasies about the birth of Jesus, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It tears Christmas up.
Yeah.
What did he say?
What
It
did you
tears
say?
Christmas up.
Oh,
There's
Oh.
Christmas.
Christmas.
Yeah.
We
yeah.
already knew Christmas wasn't the right time anyway.
Yeah.
But
Chris,
there was 2 interesting things in that.
yeah.
First off, when Roy read it, he added in the manger even though it's not there.
That's
I did.
right.
Yeah,
I added in the
you
manger.
did.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's
So
probably
maybe-
because you've read it in the Bible
So
and it's
many
always in the manger. And you automatically add it and it's not
In
there.
the manger.
Second point, I thought was very interesting to the context of one world with another.
No, it's in mine. It's in mine. In the
Okay, let
manger.
me find it. Let me
It's not
find
in
it.
mine.
It's
And
in
it's
mine.
not a guy.
Yeah.
This is what the little
That's
yellow
what we were
was.
just
Okay,
talking
so
about.
some of
It
us
was
have it, some of us
removed
don't.
Right,
after the first printing
right.
in the
Okay.
manger.
Okay,
Okay.
hold on. I'm trying to
Already
find it again. Let me see if it's in here.
So what happened when they reprinted this one? Somebody put it back, didn't they?
Yeah.
But through the context
It's
of
in
one
here.
world with another, these Chaldean priests,
Yeah, it's in here. The
Yeah, it's
manger.
in mine
That's
too.
it.
These men of God visited the newborn child in the manger.
Do you
Okay.
have the
okay, mine just says
1955?
these men of God visited the newborn child.
Okay.
What
Period.
In the
edition do
manger.
you have, Don?
Okay, that's it. Okay, listen, look at it this one. Let's reread this.
Yeah. Oh, well, I read it from up
Yeah,
there.
it's in
These
there.
men visited the newborn child in the manger. In the manger, removed at the second printing. Okay? So, there's some books out there it's going to say in the manger.
Older books.
Yeah. And some books that say that won't.
Newer books, but this is new. I know this is relevant. Got to be
Yeah, it's a
relevant.
new book. That's a new book. I
Yeah.
tell you, they put it back. See?
This is the 10th printing. that I've
Probably
got.
because people were complaining. Does yours have in the manger?
No.
Yeah. But is that
And
a foundation book or is that a fellowship book?
I have a foundation, but what do you have?
Have no idea.
I bet it's a fellowship book.
Where would I find that?
It'd be in the front of it.
Well, it's in, if it's in
Mine's a
paragraph, it's
foundation.
foundation. If it's,
And yours says in the manger? Really?
Fellowship usually
I got
has the
the
columns.
same book you got.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a foundation.
So
So
some
you-
of
you
it's
know.
going to have it, some
You see.
of them's not.
How can you tell?
I think the concentric circles is
Oh
the
yeah,
foundation,
you're into
right?
foundation.
Yeah,
Right.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
And some of them have it, some of them don't. Okay. So, I guess you could technically say it could be correct either way because they may have taken the, you know, whatever he was sleeping in inside with him after,
Yeah.
you know.
But
I
the
mean,
point, the biggest point is, I think, too, is the clarity of what actually happened. You know, like I say,
Well, it did not happen on the night he was born.
exactly.
That's for sure. Now, what did happen is some shepherds in the field knew of the birth, and they probably visited him.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's not what the story says, is it? So it's kind of interesting how, you know, it comes back to Bedouins and especially love fairy stories, don't they? And so, you know, they kind of embellish, just like when we tell a story, we like to embellish from person to person. It gets embellished a little bit more, and it's funny how the story becomes a standard after time, you know, and it's the same principle, right?
Fish grows bigger.
Yeah, it just grows bigger and bigger. Okay. You want to keep going there, Roy?
Jesus' human parents was average peoples of their day and generation, and this incarnated Son of God was thus born of woman and was reared in the ordinary manner of the children of that race and age.
Didn't say it was anything unusual, did it? Ordinary manner, right?
I think what Don said earlier, though, is very important. You know, the concept of a virgin was a young maiden.
That's
Not-
right. It was.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Don, you want to take the next one?
The story of Michael's sojourn on Urantia, the narrative of the mortal bestowal of the Creator's Son on your world, is a matter beyond the scope and purpose of this narrative.
Which we're going to get into that a little bit later, right? All right. Okay. Michael's post-bestowal status. Linda?
After Michael's final and successful bestowal on Urantia, he was not only accepted by the Ancients of Days as sovereign ruler of Nebadon, but he was also recognized by the Universal Father as the established director of the local universe of his own creation. Upon his return to Salvington, this Michael, the Son of Man and the Son of God, was proclaimed the settled ruler of Nebadon. From Uversa came the 8th proclamation of Michael's sovereignty, while from Paradise came the joint pronouncement of the Universal Father and the Eternal Son, constituting this union of God and man, sole head of the universe and directing the union of days, stationed on Salvington to signify his intention of withdrawing to Paradise. The faithfuls of days on the constellation headquarters were also instructed to retire from the councils of the Most Highs, but Michael would not consent to the withdrawal of the Trinity Sons of Council and cooperation. He assembled them on Salvington and personally requested them forever to remain on duty in Nebadon. They signified their desire to comply with his request to their directors on Paradise, and shortly thereafter there were issued those mandates of Paradise divorcement, which forever attached these sons of the central universe to the court of Michael of Nebadon.
Okay, there's several very important facts in this paragraph. Let's go through it one at a time, okay? First, he was accepted by the Ancients of Days as the sovereign ruler of Nebadon. So he was God of Nebadon, right? He finished his bestowals, right? All right. It was accepted by the Universal Father, of course, right? That he was the established director of his own creation. So he was in charge as far as God the Father was concerned, forevermore, right, of that local universe. He earned that right. He'd been proclaimed the Son of Man and the Son of God. How's that work? He was born of a man as Jesus of Nazareth. He was created as a Son of God originally, right? So he's the combination of the two, all right? came the eighth proclamation of Michael's sovereignty. These are these proclamations as he earned on each bestowal, right? When he finished the last one, that was the very last one. And then the pronouncement came from both whom? The universal Father and the eternal Son, constituting the union of God and man as sole head of this universe, directing the union of days stationed on Salvington with his intention to withdraw from paradise. Now, who we're talking about there?
Emmanuel.
Emmanuel. That's right. Emmanuel's the union of days, right?
Yep.
He is what? He is the paradise representative to the local universe. Okay? So, once Michael learned his sovereignty, there was no reason that a Paradise Trinity Son had to remain there any longer, did it? Because God said, Son, this is your universe. I'm removing my watch people from your universe. It's totally yours. Okay? Now think about that. Also, what else? The faithful days. That's the constellation directors. Okay? 3 of those also, right?
Instructed to retire.
They're instructed to retire. Why is that? Because Michael is in charge of that also, isn't he? Okay? So they are not required to stay. So when they got these orders, what did Michael turn around to do and do? He said, no, no, no. He brought them all to Salvington and requested that they stay, and there always be a paradise presence of the faithful days and the union days in his local universe. So what's he saying? He's saying, no, Father, I did this because I love you. This is always your universe. I will run it in lieu of you. Right?
That's awesome.
That's what he's saying.
So when it says here that he didn't consent to the withdrawal of the Trinity Sons, are they talking about the union of days and the Most High
So
and the
Emmanuel,
faithful of days?
Yes.
Those are the Trinity Sons that
That's the
they're
Trinities.
talking about.
Not the Most Highs.
Right,
The
not
Most
the
Highs
Most
are Lenandek sons, Verondadek sons, right?
And they're still
And they're a creation of Michael and the creative Mother Spirit.
right.
Okay? So, but the others, the union of days and the faithful of days, they originate in paradise. They're Trinity original sons, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they would have withdrawn back to paradise. Okay? But he wanted them to stay permanently as a representation of God the Father in our local universe.
so the only one that did stay was the Most Highs.
Now, the Most High stays.
So everybody stayed.
Everybody
The
stays.
Most Highs are part of the
The
global
Most Highs
universe.
have to stay. They're part of this universe.
They're on Jerusalem. They're on Jerusalem. Where are they?
Sonarrington.
Sonarrington.
Yeah. Well, actually not. They're on the Constellation headquarters.
Edentia.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Okay.
No. We're going to go through that.
Okay.
I don't want to confuse anybody.
There's more. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, each of us can read this and come up with our own, you know, I guess, interpretation of this. But
Yeah.
there's more going on here to why he asked them to stay. There
Yeah,
has to be
The main
more to
reason
it.
he's asked them to stay is he wants the paradise representation always to be in our universe, right? Now think of it this way: a paradise son, a creator son, can choose not to go through all 7 bestowals, and at that point, what happens? The ancients of days, the union of days and the faithful of days automatically withdraw because they've gone against the will of the Father, right? Now that's never happened, okay? But that's what would happen immediately, because the local creator son would say, I'm assuming control whether I'm supposed to or not. So this is just the process that they go through to get the approval of God the Father and God the Son to run their universe. And all of them choose to stay within that control. You see what's going on here? They could step out and run it on their own, but they want to stay within the lines.
And there's how many faithfuls of days? Is there
3?
3 of those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, and then it goes on to say that shortly thereafter there were issued those mandates of paradise divorcement. Do you see that? Which forever attached these sons of the central universe to the court of Michael of Lebanon. Now, They're divorced from paradise. Why? Because they're no longer required to go back to paradise, are they? At that point, they have assigned themselves to this local universe indefinitely.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Are they still representative of God the Father? Yes. They still do the same job? Yes. They're just not any longer, in other words, they're on loan to this local universe until the Creator Son finishes his bestowal. Okay? And then after that divorcement, they're not on loan anymore, are they? They're permanent residents of this local universe, still representing God the Father and God the Son and God the Spirit. Right? Okay.
What I guess the part that's also interesting to me here is that whenever in the prior bestowals, whenever Jesus left to bestow himself in bestowals, I guess 1 through 6, Emmanuel was always in charge whenever he left. So that's the other interesting piece to me.
Yeah, because it's what?
This.
A representative of the Trinity, right? That takes over. Okay. Let's keep going. You just read that.
I just read.
I think he was Rodney.
Rodney, you take the next one.
Hey, it required almost 1 billion years of Urantia time to complete the bestowal career of Michael and to effect the final establishment of his supreme authority in the universe of his own creation. Michael was born a creator, educated and administrator, trained and executive, but he was required to earn his sovereignty by experience. And thus has your little world become known throughout all Nebadon as the arena wherein Michael completed the experience which is required of every Paradise Creator Son before he is given unlimited control and direction of the universe of his own making. As you ascend the local universe, you will learn more about the ideals of the personalities concerned in Michael's previous bestowals.
Okay, so it goes through Michael's education, doesn't it? Born a creator, created by the Son and the Father, right? Educated an administrator. He gained experience well before he ever started his bestowals, didn't he? And started his own super universe. Okay? Trained an executive. He went through the training of the Creator Sons. Okay? He learned, but he was required to earn his sovereignty by experience. And what's involved with that? The Supreme.
Exactly.
All the Creator Sons are required to do this. And then it goes on to say, this experience is required of every Creator Son, all 700,000 of them, isn't it? Okay, so all of them have to go through this. And then they're given unlimited control, direction of their own making, right?
So they're all Creator Sons are born as a helpless babe on the lowest evolutionary will creature of their particular universe?
We don't know that for sure. But we know they have to go through an experience as a mortal, right? That may have been something extra, what we can't say for sure. But we do know that they have to go through the same experience as Michael did.
So in some places they might actually appear as an adult mortal on the planet without family
without going
attachments.
as a babe. Maybe
Kind of like
a choice.
Melchizedek showed up.
Yeah, full grown.
Hi, I'm here.
Yeah, that's right.
But they would have the actual opportunity to be incarnated into a planet where Adam and Eve actually had children.
Yeah. So did everybody hear what Diane's saying there? That they, other Creator Sons may choose to go into a world that Adam and Eve, their mission had succeeded.
Which most did.
Yeah, which most do. And so, the world was right on track of the way it should be, so that when the Creator Son incarnates himself, he would be coming into a situation that would be beautiful, because they would be willing and ready for this Creator Son to arrive. Could you
That's
imagine?
how most of them are.
That's the way most of them were. That's right. Okay. And that's pretty much it in that paragraph. Let's go on. All right. Diane, you want to take the next one?
In completing his creature bestowals, Michael was not only establishing his own sovereignty, but also was augmenting the evolving sovereignty of God the Supreme. In the course of these bestowals, the Creator's Son not only engaged in a descending exploration of the various natures of creature personality, but he also achieved the revelation of the variously diversified wills of the paradise deities, whose synthetic unity, as revealed by the Supreme Creators, is revelatory of the will of the Supreme Being.
Okay, notice here it always comes back to that supreme being. And also here in this paragraph it tells us that each incarnation he chose to live by the will of one of the paradise deities. Okay, and they're going to break that down for us here in a second, so let's keep going. Roy, you want to take that?
These various will aspects of the deity are eternally personalized in the different nature of the seven master spirit, and each of the Michael bestowal was particularly revelatory of one of these divinity manifestations. On his Melchizedek bestowal, he manifested the united will of the Father, Son, and Spirit. On his Leonidek bestowal, the will of the Father and the Son. On the Adamic bestowal, he revealed the will of the Father and the Spirit. On the Seraphic bestowal, the will of the Son and the Spirit. On the Universal Mortal bestowal, he portrayed the will of the conjunct actor. On the Morantia Mortal bestowal, the will of the Eternal Son. And on the Urantia Material bestowal, he lived the will of the Universal Father, even as a mortal of flesh and blood.
Okay, you see the breakdown of the seven master spirits in that?
Yep.
Okay. The first one being what? The Father, Son, and the Spirit, right? As a Leonidek. And then the Father, Son.
As a Melchizedek.
As a Melchizedek, I'm sorry. And the Father and Son as the Leonidek, right? And the Father and the Spirit as the Adamic bestowal, as the Son and Spirit as a seraphic bestowal. Now, why would it be Son and Spirit in that? Because the Spirit is part of the ministering spirits, right? Okay, and if you look at all these, they all make perfect sense. On the Universal Mortal, the world of the conjoint actor, the infinite Spirit, right? And on the Morantia bestowal, the will of the eternal Son, and the Urantia, the universal Father. So, what are these seven aspects? It's the combination, every combination of the Trinity, isn't it?
Exactly.
The Father, the Son, and the Spirit, the Father and the Son, the Father and the Spirit and the Son, the Spirit and the Father, the Son by himself, the Spirit by themselves, and the Father by himself, right? So it's every combination of the Trinity. Every possible combination of the Trinity. Do you see that? And that's what the seven bestowals are for, are about, is doing the will of each one of these individually. Okay? All right. Let's see.
The completion of these seven bestowals resulted in the liberation of Michael's supreme sovereignty, and also in the creation of the possibility for the sovereignty of the Supreme in Nebadon. On none of Michael's bestowals did he reveal God the Supreme, but the sum total of all seven bestowals is a new Nebadon revelation of the Supreme Being.
And why is that? Because it's the experience, right? He revealed the three Trinity spirits in every combination experientially, didn't he? Okay? So what does that do? That adds to the experience of the Supreme, right? Starting to get the feeling for how important the Supreme is to us?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to do a little bit further. Okay. Rodney, would you take the next one?
In the experience of descending from God to man, Michael was concomitantly experiencing the ascent from partiality of manifestability
Manifestability, that's right.
to supremacy of finite action and finality of the liberation of his potential for absonite function. Michael, a creator's son, is a time-space creator. But Michael, a sevenfold master's son, is a member of one of the divine core constituting the Trinity ultimate.
Okay, now do y'all see where this connects to the first part of the book?
You have to explain this.
Okay. The experience, okay, that Michael goes through, he starts out at the highest level and goes all the way to the most finite, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by going through this, he goes through the finite, he goes through the absonite, and he comes from the absolute, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he goes all the way through all aspects of reality in doing this, doesn't he? Okay? And that's what we've been talking about in the first part of the book. Okay? Michael is a time-space creator, but as a sevenfold master son, he has demonstrated every possible combination of the Trinity, hasn't he? That's why he's a sevenfold master son. You got that? Get that? Okay. And he is one of the divine cores constitute the ultimate Trinity. What is the ultimate Trinity? It has to do with, well, I'm going to show you.
That's when the Supreme is finished, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Okay, now look at this. This paragraph is just what we talked about. The seven supreme creators, right? The master text of the architects of the master universe, the supreme being, okay? This is what's called the ultimate Trinity. By going through all these experiences, he's added to what? The experiential finite deity of the Supreme. Do you see that? Okay? So he adds to what? The ultimate Trinity. This is what we've been talking about in the first part of the foreword, right? This kind of stuff.
It says he's a member of.
And he's a member of this. Okay, is he an architect of the master universe? No. Is he part of the seven supreme creators? Yes. Okay? So he adds to two parts of this, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
These two. You see this? Got it? Now you see how the front part of the book connects to the back part of the book? You can't understand what they're talking about here. Let's go back one. Without understanding this. You can't understand this paragraph right here, can you? Because you don't know what a sevenfold master son is until we look at that, right? And you don't know what the Trinity ultimate is without looking at this. And this gives us the experience. Let's read through this once more time. And experiencing the descending from God to man, from absolute to finite, right? Michael was concurrently experiencing ascending from partiality of manifestability to supremacy. So he went from partially being able to do something or experience something to the full fruition of it, didn't he, through experience? Okay? So he manifested himself from finite action to finality of liberation for his potential for absonite function. What are they talking about there? He's prepared himself to go out into the four outer space levels. That's why this is so important. He prepared himself for absonite function. How did he do this? He went through all parts of it, so he became part of the Supreme. As part of the Supreme is the one that goes out and starts the work in the outer space levels. So now do you see how the connection is to the Master Michaels, to the Supreme Being? Make sense? Okay.
Hey Roger,
Yeah.
the video is not working. I can't see the chart there. What makes up the Trinity Ultimate?
The Trinity Ultimate is the architects of the Master Universe, the seven supreme creators, and the evolved supreme being. Okay, and I have the next slide on that. This is slide 73. On the slides.
73. Okay.
73. 72 is the one I just read from. 73 is a picture of the ultimate Trinity. Okay, and in this picture it has God the Supreme, the seven master spirits. You see this right here? The Mother Spirit, the Creator, the Mother's creative Mother Spirits, the Creator Sons. See this here? The Ancients of Days. They call these the Supreme Creator Personalities. Let's go back one. That's part of the seven Supreme Creators. You see that? Okay, 7 supreme creator personalities, and the architects of the master universe. Okay, so if we go back here, we'll see this is all the actors of the ultimate Trinity, isn't it? The next slide is the picture of this. This is a picture of that ultimate Trinity. Make sense?
It's a more expanded.
It's an expanded view. It breaks down all the parts. Instead of just having the 3 parts, it shows who's a member of all 3 parts. Okay? And there's a little thing, I'm going a little over. Is that okay with you all if we finish it?
We've got 3 paragraphs left.
Okay. The ultimate Trinity, now evolving, will eventually consist of the Supreme Being, the Supreme Creator Personalities, and the Absonite Architects of the Master Universe. Those unique universe planners who are either creators, are neither creators nor creatures. God the Ultimate will eventually and inevitably powerize and personalize as the deity consequence of the unification of the experiential ultimate Trinity in the expanding arena of the well-nigh limitless master universe. Let's get through these last 3 because it's finish up this. Okay, who's next?
Me.
Go ahead.
In passing through the experience of revealing the 7 master spirit wills of the Trinity, the Creator Son has passed through the experience of revealing the will of the Supreme. In functioning as a revelator of the will of supremacy, Michael, together with all other Master Sons, has identified himself eternally with the Supreme. In this universe age, he reveals the Supreme and participates in the actualization of the sovereignty of supremacy. But in the next universe age, we believe he will be collaborating with the Supreme in the first experiential Trinity for and in the universes of outer space.
Oh, wow.
You see how this is all connected now? That's the explanation. So by going through this, he not only he is revealing the will of the Supreme, right? But he's actually part of it. Okay? This is how he becomes part of the Supreme Being. Okay? And you see the importance of the Supreme Being in doing this, don't you?
Yeah.
It all fits together. Okay?
Now, will this be true for all the Master Sons?
Every single one of them. Okay.
Urantia is the sentimental shrine of all Nebadon, the chief of 10 million inhabited worlds, the mortal home of Christ Michael, sovereign of all Nebadon, a Melchizedek minister to the realms, a system savior, an Adamic redeemer, a seraphic fellow, an associate of ascending spirits, a Morangia progressor, a son of man in the likeness of mortal flesh, and the planetary prince of Urantia. And your record tells the truth when it says that the same Jesus has promised sometime to return to the world of his terminal bestowal, the world of the cross.
And you'll notice here in red, as a footnote, first printing, your record tells the truth when it says that the same Jesus has promised sometime to return. It was changed to your record tells the truth when it says the same Jesus has promised sometime to return. See footnote above. So, in essence, that's the promise that Jesus says he will return to us sometime. So, we got one more slide. Let's hit it, and then we'll be done with this paper.
This paper depicting the 7 bestowals of Christ, Michael, is the 63rd of the series of presentation, sponsored by the numerous personalities, narrating the history of Urantia down to the time of Michael's appearance on Earth in the likeness of mortal flesh. These papers were authorized by Nebadon Commission of 12, acting under the direction of Mantusha Melchizedek. We edited. We indicted. We indicted these narratives and put them in the English language by a technique authorized by our superiors in the year AD 1935 of Urantia time.
Okay, and this is pretty important down here, this yellow, okay? It says first printing. This paper was in the year AD 1935 of Urantia time. and it's changed to this paper in the year 1935 Urantia time. Separate, remove the brackets, makes the formatting here consistent with the credits ends of part 1 and 2. Also, first printing this group of papers was sponsored by a commission of 12 Urantia midwayers. That's very important, right? This is our sponsoring commission. Acting under the supervision of a Melchizedek revelatory director. You ever heard that?
Mm-hmm.
The basis of this narrative was supplied by a secondary midwayer, capitalization there, removed. All three of these changes reflect the adoption of a down style for the descriptive information on the title page, which for part 4. This is a matter of formatting only, but the original style was viewed as being more formal than required. But anyway, I thought that was good. And then next time, we start the bestowal of Michael. Okay, so we made it through, and then we had technical difficulties. I'll have to work on that. Okay, I think I'll say yeah.
Ron, I got one question though.
Sure, go ahead.
And I missed last Sunday's meeting, and you guys maybe addressed this, and I didn't get a chance to review the recording. But my question is, one of his bestowals was as a Moraja being.
Yes. Yeah, immortal.
But,
yeah.
But now when he resurrected himself, he also went through that Moraja experience again.
No, he didn't. Let me tell you what the difference was. The Moracha mortal that he resurrected. I mean, the bestowal was a high level Moracha being. Okay, it wasn't one of the seven mansion worlds. Okay.
Okay.
That is the difference. See, he goes through all 7 levels of the Moracha experience right after the bestowal here, okay? So that way he completely goes through all levels of the Moracha being, okay? The ones he did in the bestowal right before that, he was a higher level Moracha being, not one from just the mansion worlds.
Okay.
That's what the difference is. And he was actually doing job. Actually, I believe it was. Oh my! Let me see if I can go back here for a second. Tell you real quick. It was on. Oh, I skipped over it. The constellation Inventum. It was a constellation headquarters. Okay. And he was a 6-stage Moracha mortal. Okay, so that's pretty high elect. That's the constellation headquarters. That's where you go after you've gone through the 7 master worlds and got to the system capital. Okay, so that's the.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing Inventum anywhere.
No.
New one for me.
No. Yeah. No. The only one he was an infant was in the Urantia bestowal.
So he was full-fledged adult, and all his other 6 was dope.
Yeah. Okay, let's say a little prayer and we'll break up for today and do this again next. Oh, no, I won't be here next week, will I? We won't have a meeting next week. I'm going to the Heart of the Mountains retreat, the Urantia retreat. We'll have one the week after that. We won't have a Wednesday night either. I'll be preparing for that. So, okay. Lord, thank you for such a beautiful day and this fellowship today. Thank you for blessing us with your presence at our meeting here. And pray that you'll allow us to take something with us today and remember these things that we've learned, share them with others. And we thank you and we give you the praise for such a beautiful plan for your Creator sons that we might experience this with them and benefit from what they go through and appreciate the sacrifices they go through for each and every one of us. We thank you and we give you the praise in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you for coming. Stop.